Philosophical speculation concerning the nature of the cosmos and our place in it has a long pedigree dating back to human prehistory. Throughout the history of philosophy, some of the greatest minds have speculated about the origins of philosophy itself. Why do we, as humans, philosophize? The Greek philosopher Aristotle has suggested that it is owing to their wonder that humans first began to philosophize. If I may generalize here, this position suggests that philosophy stems from a sort of natural curiosity. Like a newborn puppy, humans tentatively explore their surroundings by chewing on every object that they come across and incessantly find new places to defecate. This curiosity is thrust into a world that, frankly, does not make much sense. Parents of newborns are not presented with a how-to guide, and adults are not given a user manual on life. As a result, we are intrinsically motivated to explore this world that we inhabit. Leaving our mother's side, we venture out in search of new smelly toys and tasty treats. Approaching the universe with a deep sense of wonder and curiosity is a beautiful starting place for philosophy. But it also paints a very romanticized picture of the philosophical enterprise. The lone philosopher toiling away in her study, quietly trying to unravel the mysteries of the universe. This picture of philosophy brings with it a lot of assumptions about the sorts of conditions which are needed for such wondering to occur. On this note, the philosopher Thomas Hobbes explains in his Leviathan that, quote, leisure is the mother of philosophy. The truth of what Hobbes is saying here is pretty straightforward, even if academics aren't always quick to admit it. There are some basic material conditions which are a prerequisite to engaging with intellectual or artistic enterprises. This is perhaps most concisely articulated by the psychologist Abraham Maslow in his description of human motivation. We are all motivated to seek some sort of fulfillment in our life. According to Maslow, the highest level of this fulfillment includes things like aesthetic creativity and self-actualization or transcendence. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is often presented as a ladder or a pyramid because there are certain basic needs which are required in order for us to reach those higher needs. Subsequently, human physiological needs such as food, water, and shelter are the most prepotent of all of these needs, says Maslow. That is to say, quote, a person who is lacking food, safety, love, and esteem would most probably hunger for food more strongly than for anything else. Having the time to sit around and wonder assumes a certain level of financial stability. It's extremely difficult to ponder the origins of the universe when the sounds of your stomach speak louder than the words in your head. The philosopher in this Hobbesian view is a well-cared-for child. They benefit from the warmth, security, and financial means of their parents and are gifted the freedom to explore their intellectual curiosity. The inquisitive toddler plays with the Platonic forms with a sense of innocence and carefreeness. It is a bright and colorful toy, maybe even one of their favorites. But if the toy gets lost or damaged, they would simply replace it with another one. After all, there are entire stores and warehouses filled with these toys, and the child has a wide selection of playthings. Some of us, sadly, had much different childhoods. Not all of us come to philosophy through the wonder afforded by leisure. The opposing maternal figure, one which presents a not-so-peaceful place to start philosophy, is survival. To quote Albert Camus, there is but one truly philosophical problem, and that is suicide. The opening lines of Camus' The Myths of Sisyphus are intentionally striking and meant to be jarring. You see, a lot had changed in history and philosophy from the time of Aristotle and Hobbes. Hobbes was well aware that violence and cruelty were a part of the human condition. After all, he became known for his pessimistic view of human nature. Yet even Hobbes could not anticipate the horrors of the first half of the 20th century. World War I and World War II brought with them catastrophic loss of life and unimaginable levels of human suffering. For Camus, writing in the wake of World War I and in the midst of World War II, philosophy is more than a genteel game of a child. Indeed, philosophy is of existential consequence for the individual. Another development at the turn of the 20th century, one that is considerably less dramatic than war, was the hyper-specialization of academic philosophy. In short, philosophy became more academic and as a result, removed from the experience of the person on the street. With Camus, there's an attempt on some level to refocus. Part of Camus' reorientation is to suggest that philosophical investigation doesn't have to begin with wonder or leisure, but can rather stem from survival. Most people probably can't parse out the difference between A theory and B theory of time, but everyone has experienced time. Most people are probably not aware of the logical arguments for the existence of God, but a lot of people have mused about the nature of the divine with a friend over their favorite beverage. Most people probably can't articulate the difference between natural or supernatural approaches to the meaning in life, but every person who watches this video has a reason why they continue to survive. Philosophy is not always birthed in the ivory towers of your local university's campus or the dead pages of a dusty journal tucked away on the floor of a university library. Sometimes philosophy is birthed in the midst of the smell of bodily fluids, covered in blood, and screaming as the reality of existence pierces its lungs for the first time. All of us, regardless of socioeconomic status, ethnic background, or nationality, will struggle in some way to come to terms with our own existence. We all have the psychological impulse, the biological drive to survive. Yet, there is more to survival than basic biology. The question that we as survivors are confronted with is a deceptively simple one. Why? This why is the beginning of philosophy. Aristotle may be right after all, because this question stems from a sort of natural curiosity. But it is a curiosity in response to some of our most painful experiences. This is not the leisurely contemplation of the solitary philosopher reclining in her study. No, this is the cry of the grieving mother who has just lost her baby and is greeted for the first time with the gentle indifference of the world. This is the rage of the young man who hears the scream, "Put your hands on the steering wheel," as the officer takes a step back and puts their hand on the gun. This is the confusion of the teenager who has never felt at home in their own body, while their pain is amplified by talking heads and politicians debating their existence. Philosophy, to counter Aristotle and Hobbes, can also be born out of survival. Philosophy is intellectual combat. "Time I am," spoke Lord Krishna to Arjuna on the battlefield, "the great destroyer of worlds, and I've come here to destroy all people." Our opponent is a tenacious one and undefeated. An ineffable monstrosity has been sweeping across the mass of humanity since our beginning, claiming everyone in its path. Philosophy, in this view, becomes the struggle to the death against this inevitability, however short that struggle may be. Philosophy begins with our first attempts to grapple with this absurdity. There is a sense of defiance present here, choosing life in all its complexity, pain, and despair. Everyone who watches this has then, on some level, waded into the philosophical fray. Philosophy is birthed by survival as we choose to persevere in this universe that seems hostile to our existence. In our choice to live, we have also begun our philosophical journey by investigating the first and most important question in the entirety of human existence: why?